Now we're good.
Cut that out. All right.
You cut it out.
Latrodectus, the genus of spider referred to as widows, derives their name from the tendency to practice sexual cannibalism. This means after a male and female have mated, the female will kill the male.
Dun, dun, dun.
The most infamous example is the notorious black widow spider, an elegant and deadly spider of glossy black with long needle-like legs and a large abdomen emblazoned with the unmistakable crimson red hourglass. In popular culture, this term has made the leap to describe wives who have killed. Most notably are killers like Romania's Vera Renzi, who was charged with the 35 counts of poisoning via arsenic. Her victims include 2 husbands, numerous lovers, and her son. Josephine Gray, who shot to death 2 husbands and a boyfriend in Maryland, and Nanny Doss, the giggling granny, who killed 11 people, including 4 of her husbands, her sister, her mother, grandson, and mother-in-law.
It's a cool nickname.
The giggling granny. And it's great because if you look at her like headshots, she looks like Mrs. Claus.
Weird.
Yeah, she wears like the lacy collar and the black and everything, and it's fun. It's fun as, you know, a homicidal nanny can be.
Yeah.
But then we have the case of Stacey Castor, an ambulance dispatcher who struck 2 husbands and made an attempt on her child. She worked in the same office as my mother-in-law, and there is even an alleged photo of her holding my infant sister-in-law. I'm Zach.
I'm Matt.
And I'm Megh.
And this is the Yore Town Podcast. On episodes like this, I wish I had like that deep baritone voiceover voice that the guy from like Forensics Files has.
I mean, if you had that voice, we would probably use it in every episode. That's a pretty good one.
Born Stacey Ruth Daniels in Clay, New York, she met her first husband, Michael Wallace, when she was just 7. It doesn't work.
It doesn't work.
It doesn't work.
No, we're going to go back to the other one.
Anyway, born Stacey Ruth Daniels in Clay, New York, she met her first husband, Michael Wallace, when she was just 17. They married quickly, and in 1988, they had their first daughter, Ashley, followed by a second daughter, Bree, in 1991. The marriage was seemingly passionate, but a tough dynamic between Stacey and her daughters began to form. Financial stresses were common, and over time, the couple drifted apart, and it was rumored both parties were having affairs.
Ugh. Tough. I mean, I think we know the outcome because we know Stacey, and we did a little intro that had it.
Yeah, pretty heavy intro.
It seems like financial problems and affairs, usually in anything that we've seen in shows on certain platforms, is a big thing in murders that happen in cases.
The couple never separated, however.
Ooh.
And in late 1999, Stacey's husband began feeling ill. Over time, his physical deterioration presented with complaints of unsteadiness, coughing fits, and sporadic swelling. And they describe it in a couple articles that I read, where like he would wake up and like his ankles would be swollen, or just like his wrists and his hands would be swollen and like very obviously distorted, or like his neck and his jowl would be like very like noticeably distorted. And he wasn't a big guy, like he was.
So it wasn't the diabetes.
Yeah, no, it would just be like weird, like puffy swelling.
Huh.
As the holidays drew near, Wallace's family urged him to seek medical care, but he never made the appointment and died in early 2000.
Isn't that like a typical, and only living most of my life in, say Syracuse and up, it seems to be a thing, at least here. I wonder if it is everywhere else, where the like men are like, I'm just going to tough this out.
Yeah.
I mean, my ankles are swollen, then this, I'm just going to tough. And then you almost always find them.
Yep.
Dead at a
I don't
decent
think
age.
it's just men, though. I think it's a regional thing.
Think so?
Yeah, I think I think it has a lot to do with pride.
I would
do.
subscribe to that
and
for
the way
sure.
that we were brought up and raised.
Pride, stubbornness, or stupidity?
Both.
Let's put that on a t-shirt.
And it's for the holidays. It's Christmas.
Yeah. I don't want to go to the doctor for Christmas.
Anyway.
I don't know what that accent was.
Yeah, well, that was like.
I'm going to leave it in, though.
Yeah. Vern cut that.
Too late.
Yep, it's in.
Happened.
The doctors told Stacey that the cause of death was a heart attack. A determination Stacey would cling to passionately, despite protests from Wallace's biological family, namely a sister who demanded an autopsy be performed. This was refused by Stacey, however, and her being the wife,
I mean,
she had eminent domain over it.
We all probably can see why at this point.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, man.
Wallace's death quickly moved past the widowed Stacey and her 2 daughters, and in 2003, Stacey married David Castor.
Oh, poor David.
Castor owned Liverpool Heating and Air Conditioning, and Stacey managed his office.
Ooh, and for anybody that doesn't know, a little bit of a spoiler, you might get some ties in an episode coming up that could deal with the Liverpool area as well. It doesn't have really much with heating and cooling, but it's a cool story, so stay tuned.
By all accounts, the marriage was storybook. David was known to wait on Stacey hand and foot, often taking her to fancy dinners and buying her dresses. He was the image of the American man, an independent, self-made man who ran his own business and loved the outdoors.
Interesting.
America.
I mean, when I read a book and I think storybook, I don't see myself being a guy that's getting, and this is no offense to Megh, where I'm not waiting on hand and foot. And I don't think either couple should.
I just don't want to work.
I mean, you just want to play on your drums all day?
Fuck yeah.
Fair enough.
Domestically, however, there were issues. Despite his obvious affection for Stacey, he had well-documented issues with his 2 new stepdaughters. Yeah. He failed to truly connect with them and gained a reputation for being demanding and diminutive.
And not to interrupt you, but even in the first marriage, there was issues with the actual biological dad and the daughters and the mom and the daughters.
Yep.
So, I mean, just
an overarching thing in thread that kind of weaves itself in and out later on in the court proceedings and investigations and all that sort of stuff is that it's very obvious that Stacey Castor did not get proper postnatal care. She had depressive episodes. She didn't really handle the baby blues well. And I mean, it was the 80s and the early 90s. I don't know how well those things were handled or managed at that time. But it's pretty well substantiated that was probably where a lot of these problems manifested, was in improper postnatal care.
Yep, back to the t-shirt, just pride, stubbornness, and stupidity.
Exactly.
PSS.
The tensions peaked, though, when David was trying to plan an anniversary vacation, which did not include 17-year-old Ashley and 15-year-old Bree.
Come on, Dave.
This did not sit well with Stacey, specifically over the thought of leaving Bree home alone for the duration of the trip, Bree being the 15-year-old.
Yeah, that's...
An intense argument broke out. Stacey went on to tell ABC News she had never seen her husband so angry. In the fallout of this argument, Stacey distanced herself from her husband, stayed with friends, and got out of the house as much as possible. She also began constructing a narrative that framed David as an explosive drunk. David was not seen often during this time, and Stacey explained it away by saying he was drunken in bed.
Interesting.
In August of 2005, Onondaga County sheriffs responded to wellness checks in the middle of the afternoon. The call was placed by Stacey, who claimed her husband had not shown up to work and was not answering multiple calls to the home phone or his cell phone. Sergeant Robert Willoughby was first to the scene, and after failing to get a response from David, he kicked in the bedroom door and found the man naked and in bed.
Ooh. But what was he in bed? He was dead.
He was dead.
That's a key word I think we want to throw in there.
Oh, yeah. Sorry, guys.
No, I just want to make sure that he was naked.
He kicked in the bedroom door and found the man naked and dead in bed.
Yeah. I mean, it's a much different scenario. I mean, he walks in and he's just naked, hanging out there drunk. Be like, okay,
can I fucking help you?
Yeah. What's going on here? But you see him dead in bed?
Yeah.
Okay, well, good wellness check.
Yes.
Well, depending on how you look at it.
Especially because near his body was a container of antifreeze, cranberry juice, and apricot brandy.
Oh, that's that's not a good drink. I don't do the liquors anymore, but that's, I mean, cranberry, brandy, and in itself, but then you throw antifreeze. We're not doing that.
Yeah.
Very cool color though.
What stood out to me most is that, like, the thought of apricot brandy and cranberry juice is so painfully like 90s to me.
Oh, big time.
Like that. I can smell that living room. Anyway.
And this is what, 2005.
This is 2005 now. So realistically, we're rural East Coast guys. The culture doesn't get to us nearly as fast. So
no.
They very well could have been living still in 1998 and it would have been fine.
If only White Claws were out now.
If only. So yeah, apricot brandy, cranberry juice, antifreeze. And then there was a glass containing a bright green liquid. Willoughby's report included an account of a hysterical Stacey rushing to the body of her deceased husband, screaming, Megh.
He's not dead. He's not dead.
Nailed it.
After a coroner's investigation and interviews with Stacey, it was determined the weight of running his business and marital strife led David to a deep depression, culminating in his suicide.
Ooh.
Naturally, Stacey clung to this assertion, but unlike the death of her first husband, the suspicion surrounding David's death did not go away. Immediately, David's sister Linda Horzempa, David's first wife, Janice Poissant, and his only biological child, David Jr., all came forward with disbelief and objection to the verdict of suicide. The circumstances and opposition were enough to keep local authorities from closing the case.
Thank goodness. It's almost sad that family has to fight that hard.
Yeah.
And like I said, being somebody that watches these shows, it's this common theme where, and this is no knock on law official or anything like, but they're busy and stuff like that. But you always see how the family has to continually fight and keep this case and spend their own money and time and
just to figure out
travel too.
Yeah.
Yeah. I didn't put it in here. But I know like the sister was not local. I don't think the first wife was local anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the son was away at college at the time. So yeah, all of these people, like you said, Megh,
they essentially have to build an army.
Yeah,
to back
exactly.
them,
yeah.
So in the ensuing investigation, a narrative developer, Castor, slowly poisoned her husband until he was too weak to offer any sort of resistance. And at that point, Stacey administered the final dose of antifreeze. You ready?
Oh no.
Via a turkey baster.
Unreal.
To support this narrative, police wiretapped Stacey's home, set up surveillance cameras, and began monitoring the grave sites of her past husbands. You guys ready for this one?
I don't think so, but yes.
Who she chose to be interred side by side.
That's so messed up.
So it was her plot, ex-husband.
That can't be normal.
Authorities assumed a widow racked with grief over the loss of two husbands would visit the tandem graves, but she never made a single visit after they were buried.
Jeez.
Years later, David Castor's son was awarded the right to exhume and relocate his father's remains.
Thank goodness. That's such... I mean, obviously, you're dealing with a psychopath or whatever the right terminology is with a woman who has murdered two husbands. But that's so twisted.
Isn't that just weird?
To be like, all right, well, it'd be even more weird if it went husband, her husband.
Oh, little Stacey sandwich.
Yep. Or an Oreo.
Or an Oreo.
Mm.
Yep.
Turkey baster, though.
Yeah, turkey baster. And
so wasn't she... Didn't you say in the beginning of it that she worked for like a medical type thing with a transportation or ambulance?
That's where she worked with my mother-in-law. They worked at an ambulance dispatch in downtown Syracuse.
Okay, so the dispatch. I was thinking if she had medical training and she was like
no.
on the things,
Nope.
it would have made sense potentially in my brain to let's do an IV of it instead of a turkey baster.
Nope, turkey baster.
Let me ask you both this. When's the last time you guys have actually used a turkey baster? I don't even think we have one. I don't think I've ever basted a turkey to have a turkey baster.
The last time I saw a turkey baster in person was when we cleaned out my grandparents' house when they downsized.
So this is again maybe our area, but it definitely has to be an 80s, 90s, early 2000s.
My mother uses one almost every time she cooks.
Okay,
really?
Yeah.
So, but I guess our generation's a newer generation.
I use a spoon.
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of the mop brush.
There we go.
I like the mop brush, or I still have an old school self-basting roaster, like oven roaster. So it's got the dome lid and it all rolls. I don't know.
Okay.
But also got that for my grandmother who had a turkey baster. So,
and there's so many other jokes that we are not going to touch that I think pops into a lot of people's brains.
Yeah, we don't need it.
Just a weird thing. All right. So they went together. So we moved the body, thankfully. Yep.
So the investigation gathered enough evidence that a court order was issued to exhume the remains of Michael Wallace, Castor's first husband. His remains were analyzed and it was determined he was also killed by antifreeze.
Dun, dun, dun.
Yes.
By September 2007, the sharks were circling Stacey, and she could see the hammer was about to fall on her for the murder of both her husbands.
Metaphorical sharks.
Metaphorical sharks, metaphorical hammer.
Mm-hmm.
It is at this point, investigators believe Stacey began constructing a plan to evade suspicion and conviction. She enacted this plan after receiving a call from her oldest daughter, Ashley, who was away at college. Ashley was hysterical and told her mother investigators contacted her and informed her that her father had been poisoned instead of having died of a heart attack. Stacey immediately invited Ashley to their family home in Liverpool for some drinks to help relax and comfort each other.
No way I'm having a drink with that bitch.
No. The drinking lasted 2 days before the younger sister, Bree, found her older sister comatose in bed. Bree demanded her sister receive medical attention, so Stacey calls 911. Bree briefly leaves her sister's bedside, and in the time it took first responders to arrive on the scene and Bree leaving the bedside, Bree left her sister's bedside.
Yep.
And in that absence, the first responders arrived.
And what happened when she returned?
And when she returned, a suicide note had appeared next to her sister's body. It was word processed. And it was detailing how she killed her father and stepfather. Stacey immediately snatched the note from Bree, who had found it and was reading it, and gave it to the paramedics immediately.
Yikes.
Huh.
But Ashley survived the encounter.
Hell yeah.
And went on to detail the 2 days of drinking with her mother, which included several nasty tasting drinks that were offered to her by her mother.
Do you think she had stock in an antifreeze company?
Maybe. Well, she had access to antifreeze.
Oh, with the HVAC.
Liverpool Heating and Air Conditioning. She would have had access to antifreeze pretty regularly.
But first husband.
Oh yeah, first husband. I don't get that. Maybe it was just fortuitous that.
Maybe he was an HVAC guy too.
I can't remember what he did. He was pretty successful. I can't remember what he did though. So Ashley sniffs these drinks. They smell disgusting. She refuses them. But eventually she downs the cocktail out of trust for her mother, who she described as her best friend at the time.
And Ashley Wallace later went on to say that a lot of the mixtures were crushed pills with vodka, orange juice, and Sprite.
Yep.
Which I feel like I knew some people back in the early 2000s that also drank that.
But that was on the menu.
Yeah.
She went on to refute having written the note, the suggested murder of her two father figures, and claiming the last thing she remembered was her mother making her the alcoholic drink, something that Stacey had never done for her prior.
That she's never made a drink for
Stacey, it was very Ashley repeated over and over and over again that my mom and I never drank together, and she never mixed me a cocktail before.
Gotcha.
A toxicology report later revealed Ashley had been dosed with a potential fatal dose of painkillers, like Matt had just said.
Unreal.
The legal system moved quickly, and later on in 2007, Stacey was arrested for the second-degree murder of David Castor, the attempted murder of her daughter Ashley, and for constructing and implementing the plot to frame her daughter for the death of her past two husbands. Despite the overwhelming evidence and the fact that Ashley was only 12 when her biological father passed away, throughout the court proceedings, Stacey clung mercilessly to the claim that her daughter was the murderer and was the murderer of both of her husbands, and that she had attempted to take her own life out of guilt.
What a piece of shit.
So
I'm surprised that, honestly, that they were only going after that. She got second degree for that one. You know what I mean?
Yeah. You would think that'd be straight up premeditated,
first degree, but
So Stacey Castor's trial lasted until February 5th, 2009, where she was found guilty of poisoning her late husband, David Castor, and with the attempted murder of her daughter, Ashley. On March 5th, 2009, a New York State judge sentenced Stacey to 2 25-year prison sentences, along with an additional 4 years for forging David Castor's will, effectively cheating his biological son out of inheritance.
Yikes.
Wow.
So the judge closed out proceedings by declaring Stacey in a class all by herself, because never in his career had he met a parent who, in an act of self-preservation, attempted to simultaneously murder her child and frame her for crimes committed by the mother.
I mean, hopefully that's something that many judges don't have to ever go through.
Exactly.
And it's weird to me that there's all this stuff with David and the daughter. What about the other dude?
Oh, Michael?
Yeah. She just got away with that one? You know what I mean? Like,
let me see.
I mean, not to sit here and fact check you and stuff like that, but I mean, it just in anything that I'm kind of looking at as well with the trial, everything is very heavy on David.
Actually, I think what it was that I think David Jr., who was the main driving force
behind it,
I think that was kind of like the squeaky wheel got the grease kind of thing. I think the court focused on that because then there was also civil stuff that had to be taken care of because there was the issue of robbed inheritance. Yeah. Whereas Michael Wallace, I don't think
that the family maybe pushed it as hard
financially. I don't think like a big thread in the Stacey and Michael Wallace relationship was financial hard times. And so I know that they, at the end, they weren't like destitute, but that was definitely a stressor. And so I just don't think there was enough. It would have been basically up to any surviving family members of David Wallace and then Ashley and Bree to pursue it further.
Yep.
But I can't imagine that they would want to spend a whole nother 4 or 5 years in court proceedings
when she's going to get, but you know what I mean? At the time, you know, whether her age and 50 years, unless there was potential parole and stuff like that, you add another murder on it. I don't know. It's just a weird thing.
So here, actually, that's a perfect segue than we're ever going to get. So Stacey Castor spent her remaining days as inmate number 09G0209 at the Bedford Hills Correctional Facility for Women in Bedford Hills, New York. If all went her way, good behavior, good parole hearings, everything went swimmingly, the earliest possible release date would have been June 15th, 2055, a month shy of her 88th birthday.
Yeah, there it is.
Those affected by her heinous actions need not worry, though. In a satisfying bolt of irony, she was found dead in her prison cell on the morning of July 11th, 2016, at the age of 48. A coroner's investigation found no signs of foul play or suicide and ruled her cause of death an unexplained heart attack.
Huh. Interesting.
Probably due to the stress of carrying all that.
Yeah.
I mean, I would imagine. And
that's a lot to hold.
And let's be honest, I have to imagine that if there's that many readily available prescriptions in the house, she was probably, and I'm not trying to judge a book by its cover, the old saying or whatever it is, but I have to imagine she was probably abusing some kind of alcohol, some pain thing. That's probably not good for your heart.
And my mother-in-law describes her as like high-strung and wiry anyway.
Yeah.
And she was very small, like very, very like delicate, spindly, like
in this
frail looking anyway.
Yeah. And I know you have a note of potential series and stuff like that did come from it. And there was also, in what you're going to say, there was also a forensic file episode called Freeze Framed. That was a part of that. And that was pretty good there. I think I read something that there was an even on-air 2020 special that was on there as well. So.
In one of those TV specials, the picture of Stacey Castor holding my sister-in-law is in it.
Ooh, we'll have to. Well, that has to be on the internet. We'll find it.
Yeah, so that picture. I couldn't find my mother-in-law couldn't find it, but I'm pretty sure that photo is in one of those episodes.
We'll find it.
So for more on Castor, check out the stuff Matt just mentioned. There's also a made-for-TV movie called Poison Love, the Stacey Castor story. That's pretty readily available now. I know you can Google TV that, and it gives you some options to watch it. In closing, I'm going to change things up a little bit. Instead of a quote inspired by it, I'm just going to give a quote directly from the court proceedings.
Oh, okay.
And so this is from Chief Assistant Director Christine Garvey at Stacey Castor's sentencing hearing. And Christine Garvey actually has a really badass role in all of the court procedural side of this, which the court proceedings could be a whole series of episodes in and of themselves. Like, it's a very well documented. ABC News was all over it. Thing like it could be its own standalone thing. She's a badass in her own right. So if you're still out there listening, you're a real one.
Yeah. Or thank you for listening.
Yes, thank you for listening. So yeah, Christine Garvey, as Chief Assistant Director Attorney, says at the sentencing hearing, Stacey Castor is cold, calculating, and without any emotion for what she has done. Human life is sacred. Stacey Castor places no value on human life, not even her own flesh and blood. To Stacey Castor, human beings are disposable.
Ugh, that's a weird thing. That's a gross thing to think about.
Today's sources include the beloved Wikipedia.
Hell yeah.
Murderpedia.org, which is a very cool website if you're into true crime and that sort of thing. It's basically a collection of like profiles on murderers, big and small. It's an open source thing. People add to it, source it. It's like a Wikipedia just for murderers, if that's the kind of macabre thing you're into. ABCnews.com had a bunch of good articles because they followed it pretty closely. Syracuse.com, vis-a-vis the Post Standard newspaper, online publication in the Syracuse area. And theage.com.au. I don't know why, but Australia, for some reason, has a lot of stuff on this. I don't know why it was so big over in Australia. But yeah,
It's probably because it's so hard to get antifreeze there that they're
you probably
just
don't need it.
intrigued by
Yeah.
antifreeze poisoning.
Yeah.
Yeah, not a lot of things are going to freeze there.
Yeah.
So
No.
they got. I don't have an accent, so I'm not going to pretend to do one. But you can kill people with what is antifreeze? Why do you need that stuff?
Yeah.
But
It's just hot as shit here.
awesome. That was a fun episode. Can't thank you enough, Zach, obviously doing all the research and getting us through there, and Megh, as always, thanks in the studio. We got quite the trio going. We'd love if you guys would go support the social medias. You guys can check it out at either yoretown.com. You can check it out at beacons.ai/yoretown, and you can check us out Instagram. There's a Twitter, but I'm going to be real. Don't check that out.
Yeah,
And
we're
Facebook's
fighting
out.
with Elon right now.
We're not even fighting. We're just...
That's
I
right.
don't know.
Zuckerberg's fighting.
Yeah, there's enough fights. But either way, we can't thank you enough. Love it if you followed. And if you like the episode, you want to submit an episode, we're going to start expanding in the next little bit. A lot of it is, central, northern New York, or a lot of places near us, but we have some cool stories. We want to start branching out. And if you go to yoretown.com, you can see every time we do an episode, we put a little thumbnail pin on a map, and we update it every time we're doing these. So check that out. And again, submit the stories. You can send it to us on the Instagram. You can check it out at, I think, the Yore Town Pod. Check out the links in the description. There's going to be the email address. I can't think it off the top of my head. So that's all we got. Can't thank you guys enough, and we'll do this again next week for another great episode. So take care, everybody.